This is Timothy Gordon announcing a new section of Aristotle's Ethics Live beginning January the 19th, taught by me in person on Zoom. It's going to be Tuesday nights at 7 for the whole family. All ages are welcome. Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics is life-changing. Learn it with me on Tuesday nights. For more information, go to the Enroll tab on timothyjgordon.com.
Greetings, Parish Orphans and Retrogrades. Happy Christmas Eve. I come to you today with a special show on St. Nicholas of Myra. This will not be just a history show where I regale you with interesting facts about Santa Claus and the historicity of Santa Claus, who was St. Nicholas of Myra. No, I will give you a little bit of historical detail which justifies the practice, the yearly practice on Christmas Eve of Santa Claus, because there's a debate ongoing amongst faithful Catholics. I don't even consider non-faithful Catholics, who are just sort of humanist simpliciter, they're out of the debate. No, among both sides, and there's a reasonable argument that I come out in favor of the practice of St. Nicholas. Both sides have a case. There's an unreasonable way to argue the other side, and I'll mention what that is. But there's a reasonable way, and my friend Matt Fradd reasonably acquitted himself on the other side of this. I'd like to respond to some of his reasonable points. I think a lot of people share these reasonable concerns and demurs with Santa. So what I'm going to do now is, I don't typically say this in my shows. If there are any small kids in the car of young grade school age, maybe ask them to step out, because I don't want to spoil anything, especially given my point of view on the magic of St. Nicholas, the fun, the amazing childhood day. It really informs the best day of childhood for those of us that argue Forza for arguably for Arius, beard-grabbing, face-slapping Santa Claus. He's a bad man who's a very good man. He's a base dude based in red-pilled Santa. And not only was he this real historical figure, a real saint who loved children and had a devotion to children, but he was also a great heretic slapper and beard grabber. And I don't want to ruin him, because he's one of my very favorite aspects of childhood. And since I'm doing a kind of philosophical defense, a Thomistic defense of Santa today, in the face of the fact that Thomas Aquinas was a truth absolutist, along with St. Augustine, the two greatest doctors of the church, said, never lie. I'm going to explain to you how this works, given my pro position in the St. Nicholas debate. So have the kids, if you want to, step out of the room or do something. This will be a short podcast giving you, if you're on the fence, some real equipment for rendering this decision, because I strongly advocate pro position on St. Nick. As you do so, I'll just remind you at the end of this topsy-turvy 2020 year, weird year, that I appreciate all your support on Patreon, and I would urge you, if you're feeling so willing, so inclined, to visit my Patreon page. I've got great and enhancing month-to-month benefits for my patrons. Go to my Patreon page or timothyjgordon.com. We have new classes coming out on January the 19th. Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Ask anybody who took the inaugural class in the fall. It's still going, but they're only halfway through and we're paused for Christmas. Ask any of these people. It's life-changing. We had a class of 200 doing the Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, and we're starting a new January the 19th ethics class starting from book 1. We'll go through all 10 books of the ethics. It's amazing. It's a great way to support me if you don't, which most people don't this time of the year, have the money to just give as a Patreon donor. I understand. This is the best couple $100, few $100 you've ever spent in your life. And it's the most important class a lot of these people will tell you they've ever taken in their life. Take nonsense in school and we're brainwashed by the public school or the Catholic school system. undo it if you've never been trained in the Nicomachean ethics. The easiest and really the only easy, profound book in the Western canon when we study Western philosophy. Go to timothyjgordon.com and click enroll, or visit my Patreon page, because we're all just struggling out here, feeding our families, and I'm doing it, bringing you quality content as we move into the year 2021. I can honestly tell you, we feel a bit harangued and hassled by YouTube, Twitter, the accounts that keep us going and coming to you with 3 times weekly content. Okay, today's show, St. Nicholas of Myra. There's obviously 2 sides in the debate. You're either a Catholic who says, this is awesome, it's one of my very favorite aspects of childhood, this is me, makes Christmas Eve the funnest night of the year, which it did for me too, and I love it, and it's great, and it's Catholic, and it's Catholic pop culture, so it's good on 3 or 4 different accounts. That's me. Or there are reasonable people on the other side that do not like the aspect of prevarication that are represented by Santa. This is a real thing. I'm not mocking this side. I don't mock this side. It's something that's troubled me. And as a studied Thomist, I can tell you, the aspects of lying, that's what I mean by prevarication, involved by specifics of the production and delivery system used by one St. Nicholas of Myra on December the 24th, can make the scrupulous a little bit wary about, well, how do I explain this without running into St. Thomas or St. Augustine's problem of lying? It's a good question. So that's one major issue that I think reasonable folks have with St. Nicholas of Myra as it plays out in Western culture, particularly American culture. And I have a great set of answers for that a lot of people have been asking about, DMing about, especially in response to Matt Fradd, who did this a week or 2 ago, and he came out in the negative position. Now, there's a less reasonable reason that folks come out on the con side, and this is not Matt Fradd. It's just sort of some sticks in the mud, usual suspects that want to reject from a puristic context and from a puritanical context, which are distinguishable, any aspect of Christian culture that makes it into pop culture. They don't like that any of this is fun. So now they're the ones that I respond to more harshly, and I say this is not even a reasonable motive for holding the anti-Santi position, right? So that's just, I'll address that sort of at the end, why it's puritanical and puristic, purity spiraling. I don't like it as much, but this show primarily addresses the reasonable critique that, hey, ain't this lying? That's not what I want to do, especially given there are 3 types of lies. Pretty much all of them are categorically proscribed by Thomas and Augustine, our 2 greatest teachers in the history of Catholic doctrine. Yes, that's true. But here's the case. There are 3 types of lies. There's always essentially a malignant lie. That's when you're trying to harm someone by damaging their reputation falsely. Always a mortal sin, basically. There's what's called a kind of practical lie or a white lie. You call in, you go to Disneyland and you use a sick day at work. It's usually a venial sin, and it's not good. It's bad practice. It's bad for the truth. Your intent is to deceive. St. Thomas doesn't like it. Then there is the jocose lie. And this is what I think Matt Fradd talked about this some. A jocose lie is the kind of lie that's entailed by a prank or even a joke. When in the 15 seconds expended in the telling of a joke, you might use misdirection and lead someone in the wrong way, and then the punchline hits and you deliver the truth to them, or the punch, whatever it is. A jocose lie would be inclusive of you are the point man. A group of friends wants to throw a surprise birthday party for another friend, and you're the person that has to take them to a quiet dinner. And instead, you're driving them around as they set up the apartment. You drive them back home, and everyone jumps out and yells surprise.
That's a jocose lie. So do you think that would be a sin? It seems that this is a minor venial sin for Thomas Aquinas along the technical ordering of sins. It would not be a very grace-destroying act. It also, so a jocose lie is either a prank or a joke that is later uncovered. Your intent all along was to deliver the truth shortly thereafter. At its worst, here's how I'd open up. The St. Nicholas question, the practice of St. Nicholas, Santa Claus, is at its very worst a jocose lie. And this is the horn off of which Matt Fradd and people, reasonable people that don't do the practice of Santa Claus could not get the practice. If it's only just a jocose lie, shouldn't we not do it, even if these lies do not inculpate us much? They don't sign us up for much sin. It's very, 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 very technically small sin, like using misdirection for a surprise party, like certain kinds of pranks or jokes which involve misdirection. I would say this is worst case scenario. So for the super scrupulous of you out there that are like, well, I don't even want to do this is because it's a jocose lie. Well, that would be fair. But here's the case. That's worst case scenario. I think what it is more is what some of the moralist saints call a mental reservation. A mental reservation, which does not even qualify, depends on which thinker you're looking at, as a jocose lie. When you start out the practice of St. Nicholas with your children, assuming you're a parent, when you start out this practice, what you're doing is you are playing up the historicity of a real guy, St. Nicholas of Myra. I'm always calling him St. Nicholas of Smyrna. I don't know where I picked that habit up. Of Myra. He's born in AD 270. He lived for about 73 years through AD 343. Important years because he was one of the great heroes, along with Athanasius and others, at the Council of Nicaea, the first ecumenical council called by Constantine himself, held, 75 miles to the south of where Constantine had just moved the capital, Constantine City, Constantinople. You know the rest. You might have heard the stories of based and red-pilled Santa Claus grabbing the beard and punching Arius, the wicked heretic, who really necessitated the council by teaching Jesus wasn't in the Trinity. He was such a holy man, he couldn't bear the thought or the proposition that it was being proposed by Arius. So Santa was a real guy. He lived to be 73. He had a special devotion to children, and we're told he gave gifts to children. And, by the way, he's a canonized saint. This is what enables me to qualify this with no sophistry or casuistry. The practice of Santa as not even a jocose lie, worst case scenario. That's not a very bad worst case scenario. But as rather a mental reservation in even the most scrupulous minded of you truth absolutists out there in all your speech, which is a good way to be, can practice Santa without lying, pure mental reservation, because he was a real guy and he was, this is what I was coming to, a living saint, a canonized saint. Is he real? Yes. He's one of the few that the church has troubled to canonize, one of the first ones. He's a first 5 centuries, these saints are hardcore. He's been canonized, so we know he's living in heaven with our Lord in the beatific vision, all that. Okay, so he's real. He's real then, on earth, and I do teach my kids the basics of who he was, St. Nicholas of Myra. My kids enjoy the story. That's probably apocryphal, but he was... that he punched Arius in the face, or that he slapped him or grabbed his beard. That's probably apocryphal because it didn't start popping up until about 1200. Nevertheless, it's fun. It may be true, and that's going to be a key about the practice of St. Nicholas that we do on December the 24th. It may be true
insofar as we're not 100% sure. It's been something that's said about Saint Nick for the last 800 years. Now, my kids know this stuff. I teach them about Nicaea a little bit, whatever. The fact that it may be true is highly analogizable to something that's much more close to home in today's discussion. We'll get to it in a second. Long and the short of it is, he was a real guy. I teach him that. He had a devotion to children. He has something important to do with the practice of Christmas and gift giving and Christ's incarnation and divinity. You focus on this if you are scrupulous about the truth. Teach your kids this. Teach your kids. I'm talking when they're 3.5, 4, they're becoming more cogent, more lingual, and you're getting them more into the traditions. When new parents, when your kids are 1 and 2, you jump the gun. You want to have Christmas and the yearly traditions, and you're pretty much just dragging your kids through it because they won't recognize until 3, 4. But when they hit this age, start teaching them. It's cool to do. They learn a lot, and it's meaningful, and it's Christian, and it's Christianity in the pop culture. I'm going to close today's podcast talking about that as per the Puritans that don't want to share our Christian culture and the pop culture. So this is important. You do the heavy lifting of saying, okay, now kids, I'm going to start putting on for you Santa Claus movies. There are tons of them. We watch 20 or maybe 24 every year between Thanksgiving and Christmas. You know what they are. The various Santa Claus movies. Tim Allen makes an ignominious appearance in some of them. In others, they're more traditional. Some are less traditional. I mean, go through whatever decade of America cinematography you like. Show them those. What you do when you play upon a mental reservation, I'm going to talk about what St. Thomas does with the myth of the phoenix in chapter 4 of De Ente et Essentia, on being in essence. A lot of people in his day really believed in the existence of the mythic bird, the phoenix, who's got, technically speaking, an indefinable, an unidentifiable existence built into its definition. There's only one at a time, one phoenix. Its species is one in number, like each of the angel species, according to the definition of phoenixes, if they're real, St. Thomas says. And he knew they probably weren't. And it passes in and out of existence because it's reborn and it rises from the ashes, you probably heard. But technically, St. Thomas is going to use the phoenix in chapter 4 of the De Ente. I have it right here because I was studying it for wholly other purposes. He uses it as the perfect example of his real demonstration of the real distinction between essence and existence. He says, look at the phoenix, right? So a lot of medieval theologians thought it might actually be real. He doesn't just come out and say, well, it's not real. It would no longer be a good hermeneutical tool for St. Thomas to make the distinction between essence and existence if he knew it weren't real. He knows it's probably not. But by definition, this thing passes in and out of existence. Sometimes it's gone for a couple hundred years. And even if it's in existence currently, you can't say, well, where are they? Because there's only one on Earth. It's the perfect example for him to make this much, 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 much more philosophically complex point, which I'm not going to go into. You'll thank me if you ever find out about how he makes this demonstration. The point is, St. Thomas just doesn't come out and say, well, hey, phoenixes sound bogus. They sound like they're not real. I'd be a liar. All these people citing St. Thomas on, strictures of lying. He's really a stricty about telling the truth and about not lying. He doesn't feel the pressure to say, oh, phoenixes are probably not real. None whatsoever. That's not how he rolls. That's not what he does. St. Thomas says, okay, let's assume it's a maybe. This enables me to make my demonstration more perfectly. Let's assume that it's a maybe, and I'll make an argument for if yes, I'll make an argument if no. And actually what I say about the existence of phoenixes, their essence versus their existence, holds in either case. That is St. Thomas on a phoenix, which, if we're being real right now, as they say, never existed, right? St. Nicholas did, incarnately, in flesh, and does now because he's been canonized by the Holy Catholic Church. So we're dealing with two things. One is a certainty that it did exist. A phoenix is a certainty pretty much that it never did exist. You see? And St. Thomas, who's being cited in some ways rightly by my friends who come out con St. Nicholas as a truth absolutist, St. Thomas made arguments that you can use this phoenix argumentation that was kind of unrelated to what he's saying philosophically, just insofar as there were guys that really believed phoenixes were real. He doesn't feel the pressure to say, no, it's absolutely not real. Here's my point. Think about it. When we're dealing with someone that was real and is real, a canonized saint like St. Nicholas, the mental reservation allows you to begin your kid's cultural lifespan around Advent and Christmas by saying, here's St. Nicholas of Myra. You tell them sort of the boring nitty-gritty, tell them about Council of Nicaea when he lived kind of at the end of the age of martyrs, right at the end, how different it was to be a Christian back then. Your kids' eyes will glaze over some because they're young when you're starting this, if you take my recommendation. And then, this is kind of the beating heart of my point here and sort of the beating heart of Rules for Retrogrades. And then you turn on some of the popular culture movies for them about Santa. All of this stuff, think about it. I want you to really think now. The chimney stuff. Even if you put on the first Tim Allen movie, they explain the details. They're rather good at getting all this stuff out. The stockings, the chimney, the tree, the cookies, the carrots for the reindeer. All of the fun, what you might call secularized components of the St. Nicholas practice, as it's practiced in America, you can kind of take over. You just say, hey, kids, watch this movie. They like it. You've already given kind of parental imprimatur to the idea of St. Nicholas. You say, here's who he is. He is still alive. And all the North Pole stuff, the elves, all of that. Literally all of that. You leave that to the movies. All you've told them is true. He was real. He is real. He has a devotion to children. He practiced gift giving. That's what we do now. And literally, the more scrupulous you are about this, the more worried about the lying, even if it's a jocose lie at worst. I already explained to you why I think it's a mental reservation, not even a jocose lie. I'm not particularly concerned about it. I think this is all good. All good. But I can respect that. So the more, the higher your concern is, the more you're cautious. Just tell them what you tell them, kind of hermetically seal it off, then show them all these movies, all of which are fun and good and get kids psyched about Christmas anyway. We're going to talk about that in closing as well. Why is it okay for Christians to take a more childlike approach to aspects of the faith when they're younger and gradually grow that inchoate enthusiasm for the deeper aspects of the faith? Of course so. It's utterly Pauline. It's utterly Pauline to begin with kids at a kid level and then proceed from there. First, you get kids excited about Christmas for St. Nicholas and more superficial things like presents and Christian Christmas morning, and then you proceed to the deeper stuff. So that's okay. But the trick to what I'm saying really is, do not, if you're worried about this, don't say anything that would transgress the boundary between jocose lie and mental reservation. Really be careful with what you say if this bothers you a lot. That's 100% fine. Just do the St. Nicholas of Myra stuff, turn it over to the movies, and when you're asked details about the production and the distribution of the goods, some people do under the tree, we do at the fireplace, then you can say, well, I don't know, it's a mystery. This is where cue the Phoenix stuff. Look, read, your eyes will glaze over, but read chapter 4, the De Ente et Essentia, on being in essence by St. Thomas. Short little treatise, very difficult. Famous chapter 4, this is where he talks about the Phoenix. You just talk about it then and be like, well, I don't know. I've never seen Santa. As a kid, I always wanted to tell him true stories about how you wanted to. One time I waited up and tried to listen. I thought I heard something on the roof. Then they'll say, well, how do you... Because they watch the movies that you show them and you're inculcating, truly creating a culture of Saint Nick in your household, you can answer them honestly, even a little more scrupulously honestly than I do, and just say, well, I'm not... How did the presents get there? Well, how do you think? I mean, because your guess is as good as mine, or whatever. Maybe technically that's not true, but you can say it however you like and be like, well, how'd they do it in the movie? Didn't the fireplace expand and contract? Do you think that's how it was, Junior? Because that seems to be that's one major theory. You can say that. Another major theory is, he can go, he can go through the wall. He can bilocate, is another theory. Tell him what bilocation is. It's a real thing real saints could do. So you could just be like, look, these are various theories. I don't know exactly how it works, but Santa, and here's where you're using a mental reservation. St. Nicholas, who had this special devotion to children, is giving you these gifts via me. I mean, now you don't say that, but that's what the mental note you reserve. St. Nicholas is giving these gifts. And I mean, we my wife and I always distinguish between our gifts and the Santa gift, and it's awesome. And that's the unwrapped gift, the big kind of tour de force on Christmas morning, first thing, and then everything else thereafter. So we get some other bigger gifts, but everything thereafter is sort of the icing on the cake. That's how you do it. You can literally talk about the variant theories or even variant practices that some of your friends have and be like, well, this is how it kind of works. The more scrupulous you are, the more narrowly you tailor the language. Like I said, I'm not particularly scrupulous about this. At worst, it's jocose, where you're like, later on, I'll fess up. I'll explain what's up. This is not a true deception. Like St. Thomas with the Phoenix. You can kind of even explain it where it makes sense either way. In other words, the movies, the Christmas movies, the Santa movies, pure entertainment, which help to steel the resolve of your kid and help them to look forward to Christ's birth, Christ's incarnation at the Nativity. It makes more sense to do that with a 4 or 5-year-old than to explain to them, the theology of incarnation in detail. And as you go, you can be really, really close about your language. So, and you can recur to the popular theory. You can play the popular theories against each other. You can honestly say, well, I don't know. This is what I thought when I was a kid is he did this. Then I heard this other theory about the chimney, the cookie eating, the carrots, all of that, right? And you're somewhere between a mental reservation and at worst a jocose lie. That's the way it plays out. As the kid gets older, I don't know, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, the details of production and distribution of gifts, as the kid's mind is growing and is equipped at the level of neuron connection, to really get into more details, that's where they're going to figure it out. And that's where, I don't recommend keeping this thing going until the kid goes away to college or something. I mean, that's where once the detailed questions stack up, then for me, that might be, I might have to kind of say, come clean with the eldest, or the second eldest, not Abby. This year after Christmas, I'm going to get through and we'll see how many connections there are. It's prudential, like so much of this stuff that a lot of the Puritans in the church want to avoid. You have to use your prudence. But once the detailed questions get sufficiently detailed, you can no longer call it a mental reservation under any color. You pretty much have to be like, okay, well, let's go out for a Big Mac and I'll tell you something about this. I think that this is the most effective way to deal with the question, to dispel guilt, because it's not nice to lie. It's sinful in the first place, but in the second place, it doesn't feel like a nice way to proceed. White lies aren't fully white lies. And especially if you have bright kids, even dispelling a little bit of the doubt when they're in first, second, third grade and maybe beginning to doubt feels wrong. It feels wrong partly for a reason, but there's a real deeper point here. The deeper point is what I'm saying. There's actually two deeper points, which is why Santa and the practice of Santa is so utterly defensible and good. Imagine two situations, both of which are affirmed by the Roman Catholic Church and have always been for 2,000 years. The first is an easier case to make. This is sort of the second big point of this whole video. It's, 2A and 2B. Christian culture that has been grandfathered into the popular culture even before society cracked. The cracks in the wall grew large in the 60s. They're already there in the 40s, kind of fermenting fast secularizing Protestantism in America in the late 40s and 50s. It got bad fast in the 60s and it got out of control. And now the popular culture will not allow willingly any elements of Christian culture into the popular culture. They'd rather have Hinduism or Buddhism or some other nonsense rather than allowing an iota of Christianity into popular culture. But Santa's in. He got grandfathered in, no pun intended, a long time ago, right? And everyone loves him. The secular culture loves him more in an unadulterated way than Christians now, because Christians are becoming more and more like half-half. Started with the Protestants. We're getting half-half on him. And now, it's like half of my Catholic friends don't practice Santa anymore. So I'm not talking trash on you guys. I'm just giving you another way to look at this. Well, so Christian culture that is in the popular culture from Constantine's day onward, starting around St. Nicholas of Myra's day, was always considered a good thing by the popes. Always considered a good thing by the popes. The same thing goes for Halloween and the Pope literally changed it to coincide with the Harvest Fest, All Hallows Eve. This is another thing a lot of people have a big problem with, needlessly so. Use the natural alignment of natural law and supernatural law, set all the popes for 2,000 years, to evangelize the culture further. So if the culture already buys an element of Christianity that's cool or fun or alluring, there's a lot that's alluring about our faith. What it offers, the afterlife, that's alluring. Atheists say that it's a false comfort. It's like, well, that is a natural allurement of Roman Catholicism. Confession is a natural allure of Roman Catholicism. You screw up, and instead of just being out of luck, you get a comfort. You get to get the score back to scratch. That's great. You don't say reject that just because it's comforting. Same thing with Santa. You don't say, well, this is an element of Christian culture that the pop culture loves, therefore it must be bad. That's a neologism. It's a modern, stupid way of approaching things. It's dumb. It's counterproductive. It's anti-missiological. It's anti-evangelistic. Use what we have that the secular popular culture likes to draw them in further, not the other way around. Now, this is example 2B. The Roman Catholic Church is so committed to evangelization. It's the whole point of the church. Missiology. Save as many people as you can by bringing them all in. That we would even take what was not already in the popular culture that's Christian. We would take, as Catholics in the era of the martyrs, we would take explicitly non-Christian or anti-Christian aspects of the popular culture and Christianize them, and then still use that kind of composite thing to evangelize. Take the Pantheon in Rome, the great building that was all the gods. The church converted it into a church, and it's now a church. And they just have saints and relics and things there. It used to be called the building to all the gods. We're like, well, there's a popular devotion to this. Instead of worrying, I don't know how they know that there won't be demonic, preternatural entanglement and all that. I don't understand. Ask an exorcist. But instead of just bulldozing it to the ground, the early church where none of us are worried about modernism with the church of the 300s, said, no, we're going to take this and we're going to say, no, there is just one God, but this is the church to all the saints, all the holy relics, all the angels. We can make this Catholic. St. Paul did it with the Greeks when he said, okay, you have all these fake gods, phony gods. Well, you have this one corner for the unknown God. Well, that unknown God is the one true God. He's not destroying he's destroying their culture without destroying it. But too often we think that the only way to evangelize is to chop down the pagan tree and to show the pagan that, look, lightning doesn't strike me down for destroying your tree. That's a gratifying approach, and I like it, and I use it often. I'm kind of known for using it. I think me and Marshall talked about it on TNT a long time ago. I forget which saint that was in Germany that chopped down the pagan tree. It's cool, it's manly, it's dirty, hairy. It's kind of the hairy-knuckled middle finger to all the world that right-wing American Catholics get known for. I'm somewhat certainly known for it. But there's a more mainstream approach that the church used long before. I'm not talking about ecumenism or ecumenia or any of the funny, fruity, fake and gay leftism in the church that certainly rules now. I'm talking about early church, when everyone was based in red pill. Everyone that was a Christian was willing to be a martyr. These were ballers. And they did this. They practiced not only real Christian culture that also aligned with the popular culture, keep it and use it. That's easy. But more surprising than that, they would literally take pop culture that's anti-Christian or unchristian and just Christianize it and continue to use whatever leitmotif or theme to continue to evangelize people. It's kind of remarkable. And it's a strong argument against purity spiraling about things like Santa, which is Santa. I mean, Santa Claus, Saint Nicholas. That's just what his name is. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Puritans out there. Here in point number 2, I'm not talking about the people that are worrying about lying. That's a much more reasonable demur. And I think what I've said about mental reservation versus jocose lie should help a lot. It use it however you want. Narrowly tailor your language if you're at the peak level of feeling scrupulosity about lying to your kids. But no, I'm talking to the people that are just Puritans that are like, oh, well, we don't use anything other than the pure Christian theology truth. We teach our 1-year-olds to say 20 decade rosaries every day. Our 6-month-old does. And then you get into this thing, and this is really the third point of this cast today, it's the woke thing. Have you ever listened to 2 fake and gay liberals trying to out-woke each other? It's pure LARPing. Like, oh, yeah, I haven't thrown away a piece of trash that I couldn't recycle in 10 years. Then the next one's like, oh, well, even recycling's kind of out. We have a compost heap. And then the other one's like, well, even more woke than that is we don't burn our compost heap because of the emissions. Instead, I don't even know what crazy stuff they do. It's LARPing. It's lame. It's fake and gay. Don't do that. The puritanical case against Santa Claus, not the lie prevarication-based critique, which is more reasonable, is just that. It's the battle of the wokeness among us traditional Catholics. Don't do it. Don't engage in it. The big mission of the church is to evangelize as many people as possible, and also to evangelize our own children as young as possible. So that brings me to the third aspect here. The third aspect is this is the best way to evangelize your kids, is to make stuff fun when it can be. Now, it doesn't mean you can turn church, go to the Latin Mass, as I'm a big advocate, go to the Latin Mass. You can't make that less severe or austere than it is for even your 1-year-old. I was out at New Orleans, Latin Mass last Sunday, and I had to keep walking out the 1-year-old who was screaming and crying. There's no way to do it. You don't cartoonize that. I'm not suggesting that. But with aspects like the Incarnation of our Lord at Christmas, following Advent, this is why, imagine this. Okay? You introduce to a 3 and 4-year-old, we're doing it now with our 3-year-old. We just did it with our 6-year-olds a couple years back. This is how you get them pumped about baby Jesus. Is it a good thing on Christmas? Yeah, it's like the second holiest Catholic holiday, second only to Easter. Is it kind of abstract that we're holding a birthday party for a guy that's not physically present, unless there's a consecrated host somewhere around? Yep. Is even the celebratory nature of a human who is present, their birthday, is that kind of abstract? Yeah. And how do we know this? Because how do you get 3, 4, 5-year-olds excited for birthday parties? For real live people that are really in front of them, present in the flesh. You give balloons and streamers and wrapped gifts. And that's even a person like their classmate, little Bobby or little Joey that's sitting in front of them, man. Even that's not sufficiently concrete, flesh and blood. Even that's not sufficiently concrete to get the kid excited. Oh, this person just existed for 4 years, my little 4-year-old friend. And I wish him good health and salute as he gets older and older, and hopefully he'll live a better and better life. That's too abstract. You get a 4-year-old excited by filling elastic colored orbs. And, maybe if you go whole hog, you fill them with helium, not just your own CO2 or whatever. Right? And you buy presents. You get fancy colored cakes with whatever cartoon characters on them. That's how you bring young people into the faith. And St. Paul addresses it really specifically, kind of the Mac Daddy of all evangelists. He was the guy that had the verve and the enthusiasm and went out and got it done. And he tells us, when you're young in faith, you'll use more inchoate measures to excite people about the faith. I mean, when the person being evangelized is younger in the faith, you use more childish, puerile measures. When they get to a median point in their faith life, then you use median measures. Only when they get to a fully mature Roman Catholic faith, one true faith, can you kind of dispense with all of the vehicles and devices. Then you just, once you get to the illuminative way or whatever, you're on your path. No pun intended. But it's utterly Pauline to take a birthday party for our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ at his incarnation, who's not even there at the party, at the celebration, and to do at the bare minimum what you do for, a 4 or 5-year-old with somebody whose birthday it is that is in the flesh. Well, you need to do a little bit more. So just think about it like that. It's 100% fine to cultivate love for the incarnation, which lasts a lifetime, through Santa. It's a magical holiday, right? And yes, it's second holiest, second only to Easter. And yes, because of the presents and because of Santa, it kind of foreshadows in the popular mind, Catholic or secular, the excitement of Easter. Okay, this is not that great a harm to suffer for the amount of good that's inculcated by getting kids excited about Christmas. And yes, there's a transference. At a certain age, not only do you realize that Santa's more a historical reality than anything, and that your parents have been playing on this sort of not jocose lie, but a whatever I called it before, a mental reservation. But then you're like, that was really fun in my childhood, and the first Christmas that you approach Christmas Eve, the night of the 24th, after discovering, I remember quite starkly, it's still fun. It's still exciting. And the older and older you get, same thing with the second, the third, and the fourth Christmas Eve thereafter. Then you might embrace some more humanistic element, like, well, I am still with my family, I still get all these sweet presents. I was never spoiled. That's the only time of the year I got like lots of stuff from my parents. My parents never just bought us random fun gifts. It's too easy to spoil that way. So, and then you get to high school and college, and if your faith has been proceeding apace, as it hopefully should have been, if you're raised in the right house with the right father who's teaching you, and mother who's helping. Then sometime when you're a young adult, you're going to realize this really is exciting, and you're cultivating my faith at an appropriate level for a 4-year-old and 5-year-old. Same thing when it's my birthday now, I'm still happy. I still have feelings of happiness. I was never a fake birthday depressant. I never pretended they bummed me out. It's always nice that people love you and they celebrate you, and to celebrate existentially the fact that you've existed for this long and your Lord saw fit to create you. That you have something rather than nothing, existence. It's beautiful. But that's far too abstract for a 4-year-old. So you fill these orbs called balloons, and that's the most exciting aspect of being a 4-year-old at a party. Maybe the cake that has little fake balloons on it. And that's really exciting. It's a real thing. And you grow, you cultivate that amount of enthusiasm for what's true and what's good based on, let's say, a mental reservation. Utterly Pauline. So it's not deceiving, it's not deception, it's not strict prevarication to develop a 3 or 4-year-old's inchoate capacity for celebrating something that's quite theologically profound. Utterly Pauline. Again, I don't ask my 3, 4, 5-year-olds to do the full 20-decade rosary every day. No, I mean, literally, we just went from what we would do with the full family was a decade of the rosary a day. Then we went to 2 decades a day. And now we're at 2.5 decades a day. And you're measuring carefully. Okay, I'm going to push them some, but I don't want to nudge them too hard. This is what I'm afraid a lot of trads do. By the time they're, little kids who are 8, 9, 10, the youngest ones, it'd be nice to be doing a full rosary day with the whole fam. But I don't, this is where, again, prudence is the watchword. Maybe a precocious little 3-year-old can do that, but most of the time they're running around and you're just tackling them. And that's fine. But so we're up to like literally half rosary, 2.5 decades that the whole family does. And rather than being a purist and saying, oh, well, it's all or nothing. Okay, it's not a precept of the faith. You don't have to say a complete rosary or a full 4-count rosary every day with your 2-year-olds or your 3-year-olds. It's not you don't have to do it. So you'd use your prudence, and we're going to differ, you and I, on what we do. But Santa is something that I'm saying is there kind of for the taking for everyone. It cultivates a natural love for the Incarnation that will develop and will be added more theological contours onto as the kid gets older. So again, a lot of LARPs are out there saying, oh, I do have my 3-year-old do a 20-decade rosary every day. Okay, well, the problem is we don't believe you. I don't believe you. That's my problem with your argument if you're one of the people saying that. You know, I mean, or if you literally go through the motions and you do it, the kid's not getting anything out of it. That's just, yeah. Now I buy it with certain, given the natural disparity of temperaments, I might buy it with a precocious 5, 6, 7-year-old that they can sit through, a 5-decade rosary a day. That's awesome. And so, some of my kids could do it at 5, some of them can't, depending on their temperaments, which differ. But when you have a big family, you're pretty much guaranteed to have a smattering of the various temperaments. And if you're trying to do this all as a family, you have to kind of play to the lowest common denominator, which for me is a 1-year-old right now. Second oldest is a 3-year-old. Third and fourth youngest are a pair of 6-year-olds. Then you get to the 9-year-old and the 12-year-old, which have had this habituated in them since they're very young. But with the younger ones, it's tougher to do. So that's the puristic aspect of Santa rejection that I don't relate to. I just think it's dumb purity spiraling and purism by people that don't typically get stuff right, that don't thrive. These are the people raising kids that leave the faith when they're teens, and they just are snickering at the lack of prudence their parents had, and they turn very against it a lot of times. Whereas if you really If you play this the right way, if you know how to relate to your kids, if you know how to relate, most importantly, the truth of the rosary and of the incarnation of our Lord Jesus Christ and his body, blood, soul, and divinity, what the real Eucharist is to your kids, then they're going to love it. My 9-year-old suffers a bit of serious scrupulosity. So we're going to confession. She's wanting to go to confession like 4 times a week. But when you have to know when a kid is suffering on that end, you got to bring them to the other end. Okay, you don't want to hate this when you're older. I don't think you have the mortal sins that you might be getting paranoid you have. Things like that. So let's do a balancing act, which is the whole point of prudence. And, like I said, some things cannot be made less austere. The Eucharist is just hardcore. It's body, blood, soul, divinity of Jesus, and you have to have 0 mortal sins to go receive it. So it's natural to get somewhat scrupulous about that. But then the other aspects of Jesus, like his birth, when he's this little adorable baby in a manger, this is something that can be cultivated through the love of Santa Claus, St. Nicholas, who loved kids and lived a lot closer to Jesus' day than we do. Now, what I have 0 tolerance for is the Puritanism, because Puritanism is an inherently Protestant thing. Puritanism stems from the fact that the Protestants got rid of all their true, means of graces, and so they have to be, the battle of the woke. The Puritans, it was a race to the bottom. They had no real means of grace, and so they're just trying to show that they were bigger sticks in the mud than the other guy. This is what you do when you try to live life as a Christian without 6 of the sacraments. All you have is baptism, which is, those guys should thank their lucky stars that it doesn't require priests to baptize, just requires the Trinitarian formula. But when you're living without the other 6 of the sacraments, where do you get the quotidian grace from? Well, you don't get it. And you just try to prove what a boring, dull prig you are, that you rain on everybody else's sunny day, and you tell everyone that I don't believe in Santa Claus, I don't believe in trick or treating, whatever else, and that must mean I'm holy even though I don't practice the sacraments. Well, that's a Puritan thing, that's a Protestant thing. I'm not, from under this heading, under this motive, I'm not at all patient with Puritanism stealing into Catholicism, to any more than I'd be any other aspect of Catholic ecumenism, which is stupid. Why should we want to be like the Protestants? Why should we borrow anything missiologically from the Protestants? They're getting this wrong. Don't be a Catholic Puritan. It's one thing to worry about the prevaricative aspect of St. Nick. I get that. I think my argument carries the day. It's a mental reservation for developing faith in the breast of the youthful, the very young, and cultivating it apace from there. And you're playing on absolutely true reality. St. Nicholas of Myra, who is a real guy and was a real guy. And he had a special devotion to kids, and you're giving this gift on his behalf, right? And you're kind of playing down the fact that you are the middleman. That's all. That's all it is. And then if you're really, really scrupulous, you let the movies do the rest. That's worrying about lying, which I relate to. I always suffered a bit of scrupulosity in other matters myself, like my second daughter is suffering now. I don't get wanting to be unfun. We want whatever's fun and whatever's not austere in our faith, like the Eucharist or confession, is kind of austere. It's kind of frightening. I love the Dies Irae. This is about the most austere chant you can get. Go listen to the Dies Irae. It's amazing. I celebrate what's austere. But what can be fun and draw other people in, like St. Nick, a Catholic saint, it's a bunch of Protestants celebrating it. It's a bunch of secularists celebrating it. Use it to draw them in. That doesn't adulterate what's true in the faith. It's not cheap. Don't be a Puritan. And Merry Christmas. And again, watch me on Matt Fradd. I'll be doing, I guess, a live stream on December the 29th. I'm not sure what I'm going to do in my next video. This is here today, December the 23rd. I hope you guys practice Santa Claus. I don't condemn you if you can't get over the scrupulosity, if you're still unconvinced and you think that it's ultimately lying. I understand. But I think this should be a strong means by which you feel good about doing something very fun. Look, there's a lot of darkness all around. It's not bad to take solace in just what's fun and comforting and familiar from our childhood. Everyone says, "Oh, we grew up in the 80s and 90s." People our age. And a lot of those people that like Santa Claus were kind of parented by cultural Catholics at best that didn't really care. And so just because cultural Catholic parents in the 80s and 90s a lot of times were practicing Santa Claus, more thoughtful, more scrupulous, more religious Catholic offspring are saying now 20 years later, 25 years later, oh, because our parents did it, it must be bad. That's too simplistic. It's ineffective. It's wrong. It ultimately leads you to what I believe is the wrong position. I think you should practice Santa. Not condemning you if you don't, but I think it's awesome. It's fun. I'm hardcore about what needs to be hardcore. I'm moderate. I try to be about what needs to be moderate. And whatever's fun in the faith that's left over, that we can kind of just be easy and fun and give nice gifts and make Jesus' birth and birthday amazing, make it plain that it's amazing, then that's awesome. Do that. Anyway, I'm not sure when I'll do my next video. Watch me on Matt Frad. Have a Merry Christmas. You guys deserve it. It's been the most ridiculous year out yet. Darkling year. God bless America. God bless all of you. Pray for the Pope's intentions. Pray for the Pope. I don't think I can bring myself to pray for the intentions. But pray for our Pope. Pray for our church. Deus Volt. Hang tough. Stick around. Thank you for watching my show, Retrogrades and Parish Orphans. God bless you guys and Merry Christmas. Peace.
The Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is.
If you like this video and my other work, please consider supporting me on Patreon page or at timothyjgordon.com.